Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. As I'm sure many of you may remember, I managed to provide full coverage of both volumes of the Night of Genesis manga last April. With that done, the only piece of Onimusha lore that was left was Twilight of Desire, which to this day has received no official releases outside of a Chinese release in May of 2008. I mentioned in my most recent What If scenario that I was working with a couple of people to finally get that translated, and you probably noticed that a few English pages were dotted throughout that video. A user in the Onimusha Discord under the name Leopricorn, upon realising that untranslated scans exist, offered to provide a translation themselves since they're fluent in Chinese, with Murad soon offering to add those translations onto the pages using his skills in Photoshop. Unfortunately, Murad became too busy with his own work to continue, so I offered to add the translations in his place. About 20 pages in, however, Leopricorn also got a bit too busy to continue translating, but the ball was already rolling now, and we weren't stopping here. I eventually managed to find an app that would translate the pages for me since I'm not fluent, and I was able to work from there, both translating and finalising the pages to what we have today. Thanks to this dream team, I can finally say that Twilight of Desire, after 16 years, has been fully translated. So obviously, we're going to cover the story itself. Many thanks again to both Leopricorn and Murad for their help in getting this done. Just a quick disclaimer though, while I did make my own edits to the pages that Murad already completed for the sake of consistency, I'm going to use his pages instead out of respect for the work he put into it. Anyway, let's begin. Our story begins in an unnamed village. A villager is seen being chased by a Ouija, a Bazoo, a Barabazoo and a Bagu Washer, at least before Tenkai and Arin appear. Tenkai is seen counting his targets and Arin confirms his number, wishing him luck from the sidelines. It turns out that the villager was just an illusion that Arin used to lure the Genma to them, and the Genma are in disbelief that a human like Tenkai thinks he can defeat them. In the end, their attacks prove fruitless as he slays them one by one. The Ouija baffles that a human could have this kind of power. As Tenkai is about to slay it too, it realises that he is an Onimusha, dying before it can finish its sentence. With the Genma dead, Arin calls to the village that it's safe to come out, and they gratefully pay the two for their deed, asking for their names. The two identify themselves as they leave, Arin calling themselves Purifiers, and says to find them again if the Genma return, Arin happy that saving more people means more money for them. We get an inner monologue from Tenkai detailing what was once the threat of Nobunaga Oda as he tried to conquer the world as the Genma Lord, only to fall when an Oni warrior rose up and defeated him at Honnouji Temple, sealing him in the Oni Gauntlet. Now, in 1595, Hideyoshi Toyotomi had united the country under his own rule without using the Genma, and their presence is greatly reduced as a result. On top of that, the birth of his son, Hideyori, elevated his position as Taiko even further, and the country now enjoys an era of peace. Well, except for one person. Surrounded by the stench of alcohol as well as a large number of women, the nephew of Hideyoshi, Hidetsugu Toyotomi, remains unable to enjoy any peace. Obviously, given that there is actual nudity here, these pages will receive a bit of censoring. His chief retainer, Kimura Shigekori, tries to curb Hidetsugu's alcoholism, only to be angrily told to shut up. Hidetsugu begins ranting that his position as Kanpaku, along with its benefits, are sure to be stripped away from him now that Hideyori is born, the Kanpaku being someone who is a minister to the shogun. Kimura counters that despite this belief, Hidetsugu is still revered in some way, telling a confused Hidetsugu that should Hideyoshi die, then he would succeed him as ruler. Suddenly, the two are interrupted by Mitsunari Ishida, taking interest in this conversation. A stuttering Hidetsugu starts to demand to know who let him in, but Mitsunari simply says that he let himself in as a representative of Hideyoshi, calling himself the eyes and the ears of the Taiko. He begins to call out Hidetsugu's actions as Kanpaku, mentioning that his act of kidnapping any woman he chooses to indulge himself in sex and alcohol has built himself a reputation among the peasantry. Hidetsugu responds angrily at this lecture, but Mitsunari quickly shuts him up, making it clear that everything he has, from his position as Kanpaku to his residence, was given to him by Hideyoshi, asking if he's ever accomplished anything on his own. With his point made, he takes his leave to report to Hideyoshi, including the conversation he overheard despite Hidetsugu's desperate pleas. With this, Hidetsugu begins wallowing that the loss of all he has just been cemented, until he is suddenly visited by Ophelia in a shower of cherry blossoms. As he trips over his words at the sight of her, she can do nothing but repeatedly call him weak and pathetic, much to his chagrin, at least until she produces a Genma insect and offers him the power to dominate everything. At Enryakuji Temple on Mount Hiei, Tenkai and Arin are seen enjoying the peace and quiet, though Arin notes that Tenkai is rather silent. Tenkai notes that the temple is now restored after Nobunaga had razed it entirely years prior, and begins to wonder whether his time as an Onimusha will also soon be over. This quiet is soon interrupted by a villager calling on Tenkai, reporting that troops have begun marching towards the mountain. These troops are halted by the mountain's residents, who recognise the army's banner as the Kanpaku's, warning that Mount Hiei is under the protection of the shogunate himself, forbidding entry to any armed force. Hidetsugu casually tells them that he just wants to do some hunting, only to be told that that is also forbidden. But he laments how dull it is to always hunt only rabbits and deer, wanting this hunt to feel like the war. As he says this, he sends an arrow straight into the villager's forehead, killing him as he announces that his prey will not be rabbit or deer today, saying that he likes Kimura's idea of rebelling against his uncle. Hoping to kill Hideyoshi and usurp him, he orders his forces to burn everything to the ground, Arin witnessing this happen and warping away to tell Tenkai. The villagers and Tenkai are shocked at this act, Arin noting that his reputation as the Butcher Kanpaku clearly isn't for nothing, and Tenkai tells the villagers to leave before Hidetsugu reaches them. They ask what Tenkai will be doing, but he simply says that they have other matters to attend to. As it turns out, these matters happen to be retrieving his gauntlet, having sealed it away in the monument that once held the Oni Ring of Enja. They are disappointed that it is necessary after going through so much trouble to seal it, but Tenkai doesn't want to risk it falling into the wrong hands. Out of nowhere, they are suddenly attacked by what appear to be dark spiders, Tenkai realising that they are humans injected by Genma essence. But as Tenkai questions how they got here, he is approached by a Genma-powered Hidetsugu who recognises the Oni Gauntlet. Both Arin and Tenkai realises that he's been corrupted by the Genma, but Hidetsugu instead claims to have been chosen by the goddess, asserting himself as the soon-to-be ruler of the world. Noting the effort it took to arrive, Hidetsugu is aware of the Oni barrier surrounding the mountain that prevents the Genma's approach, so instead let his human forces clear the way for him, much to Arin's bewilderment. She calls him crazy, but Hidetsugu says that it was all worth it in the end since he found the gauntlet, rushing at Tenkai and demanding that he relinquish it. After trading a few blows and seemingly sending Tenkai back, he begins to revel in his new power, thinking himself to be stronger than ever, but Tenkai had used the smoke to cover the nearby Genma with purification charms, detonating and killing them. Hidetsugu is rather impressed that a simple human was as strong as this, but Tenkai coldly warns him that he is no ordinary human, disarming Hidetsugu and impaling him against the monument. He tells of the countless individuals that he's seen sell their souls to the Genma for more power, some even stronger than Hidetsugu, but the Tenkai had battled them one after the other, already losing count of how many. With Hidetsugu now at his mercy, Tenkai prepares to deal the final blow, only for Arin to notice someone else lunging at him and warning him. Tenkai is quick to react, but as he takes a blow from this new foe, he is stunned into inaction as he recognises their movements, being forced to back away as he is being pressured by none other than Kaede. Now frozen in shock, Tenkai is caught unprepared as Hidetsugu lands a couple of powerful blows, not only knocking Tenkai away, but also knocking the gauntlet from his wrist and catching it. Tenkai's attempts to retrieve it are prevented by Kaede's continued attacks, and he is forced to watch as Hidetsugu begins to release the power sealed within and absorb it into himself, terrifying Tenkai and Arin as they recognize the power of Nobunaga become unsealed. He desperately tries to rush at Hidetsugu in the hopes of stopping this, but having now absorbed Nobunaga's strength, he savagely slices at Tenkai, tearing him in half with a single swing. However, he notices that Tenkai had somehow managed to cut his own gauntlet in half, looking down to see the corpse vanish, realizing that the monk he killed was just an illusion. While annoyed that their tricks helped them survive, he remains confident that even with only half the gauntlet, he is now invincible, ordering his forces to hunt the two down and torture them to death while he revels in the fact that he needn't fear even Hideyoshi now. As Arin is seen dragging Tenkai to safety, we cut to Fushimi Castle to find Hideyoshi, furious at being told of the attack on Mount Hiei by Mitsunari. He mentions that with Hideyori's birth, Hidetsugu had already become useless, and with this act, he begins to consider executing him outright, though is also not above simply having him commit seppuku, though Mitsunari asserts that such an outcome is likely not possible. Hideyoshi then questions their progress on the Genma, and Mitsunari tells him that they are around 30% finished, informing him that the Genma research that they have been conducting should be ready for testing. Hideyoshi gives Mitsunari the okay to do so, noting that in order to combat Hidetsugu, breaking the seal on the Genma may soon be necessary. Back at the mountain, Arin keeps watch over Tenkai as his wounds heal, telling him not to push himself considering the deep cuts he endured. She soon begins to ask about the woman they saw, but is quick to apologise when she sees that it's a bit of a sore spot for him. However, Tenkai begins to speak about his time with Kaede, fighting together once Nobunaga's Genma began hunting him, only for her to be killed by Hideyoshi during a battle with Garganto, blocking a bullet intended for him. As he is remembering, Arin actually tells him that she is a bit relieved, mentioning that perhaps one day he could potentially fall in love with someone else. Tenkai can't help but chuckle and agree, soon picking up his stave, strapping the second half of his gauntlet to his wrist, and telling Arin that it's time to get the other half back. We then cut to the outskirts of the Jurakudai Palace, an army brandishing the Toyotomi banner and preparing to fire on it. However, some of their forces are blasted away as Hidetsugu appears to face the army himself with a horde of Genma behind him. The humans are baffled at his recklessness in personally confronting him, but Hidetsugu confidently challenges them to attack. This battle is spectated from above by Ophelia and, shockingly enough, Guildenstern of all people. Ophelia mentions wanting to bring Hidetsugu down now that he has Genma power by using the Genma against him, but also notes the smell of Hideyoshi's army, able to tell that he has managed to break the Genma seal. Guildenstern confirms that it's about 50% complete, but also mentions that Hidetsugu is only meant to be bait to force Hideyoshi's hand, questioning if this power is too much, and concluding that perhaps Nobunaga's full power may be manifesting. This only pleases Ophelia, who is perfectly content with taking advantage of whoever is winning so long as the winner is a Genma, noting that Hidetsugu is quite obedient to her. The battle soon ends with Hidetsugu cackling into the night as he stands atop a mountain of corpses. Soon after, Tenkai and Arin approach Kyoto, noting how empty the city has become since Hidetsugu pushed Hideyoshi's forces back and claimed this area as part of his own world. The Genma soon appear to ambush the two, having set up a trap for them, and Tenkai prepares to handle them as Arin promises to meet in their usual spot, warping away before a gacha is able to strike her. With Arin gone, Tenkai calls their attention to him as he prepares to fight them. Now sitting on a balcony away from the fight, Arin muses that since Hidetsugu's men are continually hunting them, sneaking into the city simply is not possible, especially with security as tight as it is. She begins to wonder whether she'd be more help staying out of it when she starts hearing music from below, spotting someone dancing using weapons as props. She can't help but be fascinated by the sight, but the dancer ends up dropping her sword mid-routine, and Arin ends up dropping down and catching it, joining the dance so the girl doesn't lose her flow. As the two continue, onlookers begin to take notice and are equally entranced by the performance, spectating in droves. The young children are in awe at how much money their routine made them despite it only being a practice session, and the dancer tells Arin that she's been staying here for a while also asking if Arin dances for a living as well. Arin just laughs and says that she barely even knows the basics, simply imitating what she sees, something that mildly annoys the dancer. Arin is quick to gush over the dance, not wanting it to end and encouraging her to smile a bit more, loudly calling her cute when she does. The dancer introduces herself as Hinagiku, asking Arin not to shout like that. But while the children also mention how pretty Hinagiku is, Arin continues to encourage her to smile more. Once she calms down, Arin notes that she's never seen anyone use a weapon as a dance prop, and Hinagiku stammers that while skills in juggling can earn money, it doesn't always guarantee food or clothing. She tells Arin that she was raised in a family of samurai and only ever really learnt martial arts, relying on those skills to survive. Arin is only further impressed by this, realising that this dance was Hinagiku's own design, but also notes that with Kyoto as deserted as it is, it doesn't matter how many people may like it if nobody is around. Hinagiku explains that Hidetsugu had recently begun a celebration with a banquet, inviting performers to entertain him, Arin noting the multiple notice boards advertising as such and asking if anyone actually took the bait. Hinagiku confirms, telling of the supposed rewards if they are able to make him happy, so they come here anyway despite the dangers to entertain the self-titled King of Literature. Unfortunately, half of them never return, including the parents of the present children, and Hinagiku wants to enter and rescue them as recompense for the kindness they showed her, on top of further personal reasons, but laments that they will not be able to perform on such a large stage on their own. Seeing her apprehension, Arin decides to ask her if she wants to work together. They soon consult Tenkai, Arin reciting her lie that she is an Izuma Taisha shrine maiden, but he is just confused and asks why her face is painted. Arin says that it's to keep Hidetsugu from recognizing her, while Hinagiku asks if it's too much, and Tenkai realizes that Arin plans to sneak inside the Jurakudai palace to help him from the inside. While he initially thinks that it's not a bad idea, he quickly tells her no, thinking that it's far too dangerous. Hinagiku interjects, asserting that they have a common goal and that Arin's help will perfect her dance. Seeing Tenkai as Arin's partner, she asks that they trust each other since they are cooperating, and Tenkai relents, asking Arin to at least come up with a fake name first to ensure that she isn't caught out. Arin ends up deciding to take inspiration from the vocabulary of the Toyotomi family, using the word Toyokuni as a base for her new identity. She and Hinagiku's troops soon reach the palace, and when one of their many onlookers asks her name, she identifies herself as Okuni Izumono. That night, they spectate another group of performers attempting to entertain Hidetsugu, most of them in awe at the extravagance of it all. Hinagiku, however, takes the time to examine her surroundings, taking particular notice of Hidetsugu's personal bodyguard, Kage-sada Maeno. As she does this, other nearby spectators take potshots at them, saying that only those confident in their skills would be here and calling them exaggerated embroidered pillows. Suddenly, Hidetsugu drops his fan and announces his boredom with the current performance, causing everyone to freeze in nervousness. He approaches the performers and reminds them that his many signposts ordered them to make him happy, but says that all they're doing is jumping around in the same way. Telling them not to bore him, he suddenly decapitates one of the performers, ordering them to either keep performing or go to hell. Everyone is horrified by this display, the triplets realizing that their parents likely died the same way, and many of those present attempt to flee for their lives. Kasegada ends up standing in their way, telling them to go back to their seats, but when they keep running, he cuts each and every one of them down, telling them either to use their skills to survive or die. Hidetsugu is quick to demand that the show continues, ordering the next act to step up, but the triplets remain too scared to move. They are soon calmed as Arin promises that everything will be alright, and encourages Hinagiku to be confident, certain that everyone will be as amazed at her dance as she was. Hinagiku can't help but smile and express a level of excitement at fighting to survive on such a large stage, and the two begin their dance, Hidetsugu telling them to make their own noise if they don't have music. The two begin their dance, Hidetsugu actually taking notice of them, but as their routine continues, he notes that their movements and rhythm have changed, labelling it too messy. The triplets soon start playing their music to accompany the dance, which he also seems to appreciate, and he soon applauds their efforts. He calls their dance a mess, but also says it's fun to mess around sometimes. Arin bows and he calls her courageous for a woman, asking if she feels any fear when performing on a stage where failure means death. But she responds that entertaining adults leads to rewards, encouraging him to offer alms. Hidetsugu confirms her name and announces that if she and her troupe can entertain him for the next 3 days, he will give them their reward, sending them to the palace cells. Hinagiku comments on the palace's prestige, noting that even the cells are rather luxurious, while Arin is able to lull the triplets to sleep after the night's events. Hinagiku is impressed at her handling of the three, and Arin confirms that she's good with kids, Hinagiku thinking that must make her quite childlike as well. Arin is quick to conclude that their parents are likely dead by now, and Hinagiku, having spoken to the guard that brought them here, confirms that since the banquet started 3 days ago, not a single person has survived, concluding that staying here for long is not a good idea. Arin is unfazed by this, however, and promises to find a way out, asking Hinagiku to find a way to guide Tenkai in, and as Hinagiku questions what she's doing, she is left flabbergasted as Arin disappears in front of her. Seeing this, she begins to remember the first time she saw Arin, initially believing that a Catholic angel had descended upon her, and notes that Arin gave her a similarly warm feeling to another, this other person being Gracia Hosokawa, the daughter of Mitsuhide Akechi and wife to Tadaoki Hosokawa. We flash back briefly to a meeting with Gracia, the latter questioning Hinagiku and hoping that she would continue serving as her maid, but Hinagiku mentions that her father had been sentenced to death, worrying that Gracia would be the subject of gossip if she interacted with a sinner's daughter. While the younger Hinagiku stresses that she doesn't want to burden Gracia, she remembers in the present that Gracia, as the daughter of Mitsuhide, was already the subject of stigma due to her father's rebellion at Hanoji, also noting that her health had also begun to decline at this point. Gracia, however, embraces the young girl and gives her what appears to be a lantern cross necklace, saying that while Hinagiku doesn't need God's blessing, she had hoped that it would still be accepted. Gracia's words echo in Hinagiku's mind, promising that no matter what, Gracia would always see her as her daughter, Hinagiku thinking that she may be starting to like Arin. As for Arin, she is able to find a tunnel that leads to the outside, using a Tengu feather to summon a black cat to find Tenkai and inform him that their plan goes into effect tomorrow. The next day, the girls are being led by some soldiers to begin their 3-day streak of entertaining Hidetsugu, telling them that their strange costumes may have gained them the Lord's notice, but it won't work a second time. They note, however, that what the troupe are wearing now are rather plain, asking where their eye-catching outfits are, but Hinagiku coldly tells them that they can't escape if they draw attention, drawing her spear and killing the guards. Arin leads them to the escape tunnel and herds the triplets inside, ensuring a clean escape, but also says that she'll need to meet Tenkai herself since there's no way in from the outside. However, Hinagiku decides to stay and keep watch to ensure no one notices their escape. Arin protests, but Hinagiku mentions that 2 people fighting the leader of a country would be too chaotic, and now that they've already come this far, they no longer need each other's help. Hinagiku is soon quick to usher Arin out, hearing someone approaching, and as Arin reluctantly leaves her, Hinagiku waits at the corner, noticing that only one person is approaching, and preparing to swiftly and efficiently strike them down. However, her strike is instantly blocked by her target, that target turning out to be Kagesada, surprised that such a merciless attack could come from a woman. He asks what she's doing, telling her that Hidetsugu is waiting for her, and questioning the whereabouts of Okuni, though quickly sees that Hinagiku is likely aware of what will happen in the end. Hinagiku mentions his name, surprising him that she knows him, and she confirmed that she used to read about him while she served Gracia. She then recites her knowledge of him, which makes a change from me doing it, recounting that he married Gracia's daughter, the Princess Ocho, to become her son-in-law. He was a minister that served Hideyoshi for a number of years, the son of Nagayasu Maeno, and is known to be a master swordsman, knowing what it means to be a warrior. He chuckles, noting that he has been rather well received, but she questions why someone like him would stand by Hidetsugu's atrocities, blaming his complacency for allowing Hidetsugu to murder so many. But Kagesada simply says that Hidetsugu cannot be stopped. She asks him to at least stay out of it, even if only for Ocho, asserting that she doesn't want to make Gracia sad anymore, but Kagesada silences her, unwilling to abandon his path even for his wife. Unwilling to listen to her anymore, Kagesada prepares to kill her, but she refuses to flee even from him, and the two do battle, Hinagiku splitting her spear into segments to throw him off. He is able to adapt and counter, and though Hinagiku wonders how many times that she has fought in actual combat considering her circumstances, she is aware that he is used to fighting, noting that they are both only human. However, Kagesada manages to launch a monstrous strike that shakes the earth and sends her airborne, much to her shock, and she realises that she is finished as he breaks her spear. However, as he tries to finish her off, she is suddenly warped behind him by Arin, relieved to have made it back in time to save her as she embraces her, and a now present Tenkai calls Kagesada's attention, declaring himself the young minister's new opponent. Kagesada recognises Tenkai's red armour and realises that he is the purifier that Hidetsugu has been searching for, seeing that he is here to harm Hidetsugu and lunges at him, revealing himself to also be a Genma. Without a word, Tenkai is able to instantly slash through Kagesada's body, ending the battle as quickly as it began. Kagesada is baffled that the power he gave his humanity for proved useless, and Tenkai notes that Kagesada's eyes retain some of their human shine, asking why he allowed himself to become a Genma. Kagesada tells him that without strength, their cause would be beyond them, resigning himself to becoming an enemy of the world in order to secure the position of ruler for Hidetsugu, succumbing to his wounds as he finishes his sentence. While Tenkai acknowledges Kagesada's chosen path, he resolves that he must stop Hidetsugu and prevent the Genma's conquest. Hinagiku agrees and asks to stand with him, not willing to sit back and rely on them to take care of everything, and they prepare to stand against Hidetsugu. Meanwhile, Ophelia continues to egg Hidetsugu on, promising that with the full gauntlet, he will gain the full power of Nobunaga and become unstoppable, telling him to destroy everything. He bursts out of the palace as Genma begin to swarm the Oni, and Tenkai remarks that the area is becoming almost like hell, killing a Genma and sending its broken sword into the door next to Hidetsugu. He demands the gauntlet back, and Hidetsugu challenges him to take it if he thinks he can, walking back into the palace and telling him that he should be honoured that Hidetsugu would kill him personally. Arin continuously warps about to confuse the Genma, making it easier for Tenkai to kill them, though Hinagiku also manages to slay a red knight before it can slash at the monk. While he thanks her, she responds that it's too early for thanks, revealing that she has faced monsters before, but not this many, also seeing that the main gate remains closed. However, the gate suddenly flies open, Arin gleefully shouting as such to the pair as they start working out how to get there through all the Genma. As they say this, a massive blast knocks them back, Hinagiku commenting on the sudden oppressive atmosphere as Arin makes sure she's alright. While Tenkai is already fixated on something above them, Arin also notices the shift in atmosphere and looks up, noticing someone familiar. This individual turns out to be Guildenstern, immediately recognising Tenkai and calling him an Oni lost to the torrents of history. Tenkai demands to know what he's up to this time, but Guildenstern says that what he wants has never changed, to be able to partake in endless study in order to create stronger and more perfect Genma. He is quick to compare this desire to Tenkai, asking if he really thinks that he is still human fighting for humanity, but also concedes that that belief allows Tenkai to let go of his feelings. He then mockingly asks Tenkai what he thinks of his new creation seen at Mount Hiei, Tenkai realising that the Kaede he faced was Guildenstern's doing. Now beginning to get angry, he coldly asks what Guildenstern did, and the scientist gleefully reveals that he created her, happy with the result considering that she is practically identical to the original Kaede, asking Tenkai what he thinks. He continues to goad Tenkai, asking if she was the one he used to love, and as Aren is able to see Tenkai's grief beginning to resurface, Hinagiku shouts that they are about to be surrounded, Guildenstern noting that his existence can no longer be tolerated as he announces that their long-standing feud ends here. Despite the Genma attempting to dogpile him, Tenkai suddenly flies forward and impales Guildenstern at the throat with his stave. Hinagiku is baffled at his speed, thinking that no normal human could possibly be that fast, but as Guildenstern tells him that such an attack would be useless, Tenkai flings one of his charms onto his stave, exploding right behind the scientist's head. The blast reaches the Genma that had previously attacked as well, and as Tenkai drops to the ground, he grabs two of their swords and begins tearing through more Genma, having now flown into a rage at Guildenstern's taunting. The scientist, now only his severed head remaining from the blast, questions how Tenkai could kill him without the Oni Gauntlet, but Aren calls him stupid and says that the answer is obvious. He had made Tenkai angry. She asserts that Tenkai has always felt human at heart, and explains that such a thing as the heart can both weaken and strengthen a person, clutching her own chest as she says that that's why it's so fascinating, Hinagiku noticing her expression. Guildenstern remains unable to understand, but warns that the difference in power between Tenkai and Hidetsugu is too great for it to matter, no doubt in his mind that he is the strongest Genma. Tenkai's rage-fueled massacre continues until he reaches the entrance to the palace, but hesitates at the idea of leaving the other two behind, only for Aren to tell him to go forward while they watch his back. He hesitates again, but Hinagiku playfully notices that he doesn't know how to read the room, finally convincing him to focus on defeating Hidetsugu and rush ahead. The two prepare to hold the Genma off at the main gate, while Hidetsugu is seen reciting a Moonflower death poem, one that he claims is for someone else as Tenkai reaches him. He says that once he has the full gauntlet, he will finally be able to enact his plans to become ruler, and become the complete version of himself, but Tenkai asserts that Nobunaga's full power would be too much for him. Hidetsugu suddenly starts yelling, asking what the point in talking is as he draws his blade, and telling that he has always known the weight of his worth. He continues, telling the monk that he has been a puppet of a ruler before, understanding that a puppet's strings are soon cut once they're no longer useful, and that only upon the threat of death can a puppet resist with all their might. However, someone has finally given him the chance to escape that fate, confirming Tenkai's assumption that he means the Genma, elated that he can now fight for himself. Once he has the gauntlet, he will first kill Hideyoshi for his manipulation, then kill every one of his enemies, and finally send his troops to conquer until there is nothing left to conquer, saying it would be interesting if the world bowed at the feet of people like him. At this point, Tenkai realises that Hidetsugu is too much to be able to hold back, seeing that his power is genuinely life-threatening for him, and refusing to allow him to bring the world to ruin. Amused at Tenkai's resilience, Hidetsugu challenges Tenkai to try and stop him, encouraging him to put his life on the line for it. The two lunge at each other one final time and impale one another at the same time, though Hidetsugu is significantly less fazed by the attack, noting that even now, Tenkai refuses to give up. While Hidetsugu's blade pierces through Tenkai, he tells the monk that his attack felt like nothing more than a mosquito. Outside the palace, Aren and Hinagiku continue to fight off the Genma, and while the main gate is able to somewhat bottleneck them, it still doesn't give them a chance to breathe. As they acknowledge this, a gacha breaks through the wall, allowing the rest of the Genma to pour through and surround the two, much to their horror. But as they prepare to stand against the horde, the Genma suddenly stop in their tracks, slowly beginning to shrivel away as their souls begin flying towards the palace while the two watch on in confusion. Hidetsugu notices this too, the souls flying into Tenkai until his Genma blade fades away and the monk's wound heals, Tenkai ripping his arm away to reveal the full gauntlet on his arm, having driven his own half into Hidetsugu in order to reattach it to the other. With the full gauntlet in hand and the souls of the Genma gathered within, Hidetsugu lunges at Tenkai again in a fury as the monk transforms, cleaving Hidetsugu in two as he takes on his Oni form. Realizing the true power of the Onimusha, Hidetsugu can only express regret in failing to land a fatal blow of his own, weakly laughing as he shrivels away and Tenkai reverts to his human form. As this happens, Tenkai suddenly lobs his now broken stave behind him, piercing a hidden Ophelia's torso and realizing that she was the goddess that Hidetsugu mentioned, demanding the truth from her. However, Kaede appears once again to stop him, though this time he is able to defend from her attacks as Guildenstern's words echo in his mind, remembering who she used to be to him. Regardless, he is able to overcome and restrain her, asking if she remembers anything at all, only to be met with silence. Suddenly, a voice echoes out, warning that he cannot stop the Genma's purpose as he realizes that Ophelia has disappeared. Kaede also taking the opportunity to escape as well as Ophelia warns that the real hell is about to begin. Arin appears as Tenkai is pondering this, relieved that he is alright, but also warning him that the palace is about to collapse, telling him to escape while he can. Following the death of Hidetsugu, an enraged Hideyoshi infamously orders the execution of 39 people, including the wives, concubines and children of his late nephew, doing so publicly in order to make an example out of them. Mitsunari tells Hideyoshi of the execution's success, noting that the crowd were too frightened to continue watching, but Hideyoshi is unsatisfied, calling for the destruction of anything and everything associated with Hidetsugu, be it a castle or a family. He remains frustrated that he allowed someone like Hidetsugu to threaten his authority and admits that he forgot about the Genma's power, but he is assured that he needn't worry. While his mainland campaign may have failed, his new power will make him unstoppable, and Mitsunari introduces him to Luis Frois, asking for him to help guide the young Hideyori so that he may one day become the world's new ruler. With the threat now past for them, Arin and Hinagiku are seen under a tree, the latter asking Arin if she plans on performing again in the future, and noting that despite the threat of death in Kyoto, dancing with Arin made her quite happy. Seeing that Hinagiku is inviting her to join her troupe, Arin becomes rather happy, but regretfully declines the offer, knowing that without her around, Tenkai would have to carry his burdens alone. At this point, Hinagiku recognises Arin's love for the monk, to which Arin blushes and confirms, but also admits that she's not sure whether she'd ever be able to actually say anything to him. Hinagiku understands and asks her to pray with her for a moment, saying that if Arin can laugh happily, then she would be happy too. With a smile, Arin asks Hinagiku to accept the name Okuni from her, using it as proof that they once danced together, and Hinagiku accepts, from now on officially identifying herself as Okuni Izumono. Arin rejoins Tenkai, who laments that his days of constant fighting have resumed, and Arin playfully confirms, thinking to herself that her feelings for him will never change. We end the story with her telling him to hurry up as they set out for their next journey. And with that, our coverage of Twilight of Desire is complete. I'll be honest, I think this may actually be my favourite of the mangas now. Needless to say, we have a lot to talk about here. First of all, it was cool to see exactly how Tenkai initially sealed away the gauntlet. Seeing the Enja monument used for a similar purpose was honestly a really nice callback. Funny enough, this manga also explains why Hideyoshi never launched an attack on Mount Hiei throughout the games, despite likely knowing that the Oni were hiding out there by the time the game's events rolled around. It turns out that the mountain was sacred enough to gain the official protection of even him, so much so that Hidetsugu's attack was enough for Hideyoshi to immediately consider execution as punishment. Speaking of Hidetsugu, I quite like how he's written here to fit in with his actual history. You guys know what time it is. In 1593, upon the birth of Hideyori, the relationship between Hideyoshi and Hidetsugu slowly began to deteriorate, leading to him committing unjust murders and earning the nickname Life-Killing Kampaku. In 1595, Hideyoshi accused him of plotting a coup attempt and ordered him to commit seppuku at Mount Koya. Playing with this idea by having the Genma actually encourage him to try and overthrow his uncle felt great, especially considering that Ophelia, quite possibly the most manipulative Genma to ever exist, was the one spearheading this plot, basically deciding to have them both fight each other and side with whoever wins. With the Genma in mind, we also kinda have to talk about the return of Guildenstern, even if his return is just a little short-lived. While I'm always happy to see Guildenstern again, it does raise the question of exactly how he is able to have returned. In just about all other instances of revival, it's always Guildenstern that's responsible. So while he has resurrected so many, including Nobunaga, Ranmaru and Marcellus, who resurrected him? I will admit that I may have a theory on this that I may expand on in a future video, but my guess is that a Genma's death is not the end for it, simply that their soul is sealed within the underworld, so when the Triumvirate were unsealed by Mitsunari, they brought Guildenstern back with them, considering how dangerous his genius mind can really be to humanity. This may also be supported by the fact that even after their deaths, the Oni felt the need to seal the souls of Genma corrupted Oni within the Oni Gate to ensure that they can never return, which would explain why the likes of Marcellus and Garganto are never seen outside of it by the time Dawn of Dreams begins. Why would they do that if they couldn't be revived? Like I said, I may expand on this in a later video. For now, with Guildenstern in mind, we obviously have to talk about his new creation, the being that resembles Kaede. While I would love to see the real Kaede return in some way, we know that will never happen. But given Guildenstern's long-standing conflict with Samanosuke, it's no surprise that he would use her death to play mind games with Tenkai, creating a Genma in her image specifically to mess with him and play with his grief. I was initially worried that it was the real Kaede revived with no memories and then just forgotten about, but in the end we do get confirmation that it's literally just a Genma puppet in her image. It definitely feels on brand for Guildenstern to pull something so cruel to hurt who is likely his greatest adversary. Next, we have to talk about Hinagiku. Funny enough, this may actually be my favourite part of the manga, since it answers a question I've had for the last couple of years now. Under what circumstances did Tenkai and Okuni actually begin working together? If we remember, Okuni pops up in both volumes of Night of Genesis, having already established a working relationship with Tenkai, but it was never elaborated on how that alliance actually began. It's good to see its origins here. Funny enough, translating her name was actually one of the hardest parts about the translation as a whole. Every time I tried to translate her name, it kept coming up as Daisy, which would obviously not be correct. Except it technically is, since the name Hinagiku literally means Daisy. Admittedly, I spent way too much time on trying to get her name right, when one of the intermission pages literally has her name written in English, which is a bit embarrassing. Just my tunnel vision at work there once again. It still doesn't actually explain here how she is able to kill Genma, as at this point I doubt that she ever becomes an Oni. If I were to guess, she holds a more holy power in a similar fashion to Roberto, perhaps related to Amitabha or Christianity. Finally, we have the appearance of Gracia Hosokawa, the daughter of Mitsuhide Akechi, though in this context she acts more as a part of Okuni's backstory, having very little role outside of shaping Okuni's character. However, it's this small flashback that may actually explain who Hinagiku is supposed to be based on. Given that she worked as Gracia's trusted maid, Hinagiku, despite strangely not sharing the same name, may actually be based on Kaio Kiyohara, Gracia's maid that was baptized and given the name Maria. I'm not sure why they went with the name Hinagiku instead, but it's an interesting connection. Overall, I quite like how a couple of loose ends were tied up by this manga. Not all of them, but some of them. Either way, with this finally done, I can confidently say that our coverage of the Onimusha lore is finally complete. In truth, I'd never actually expected to be able to cover this manga, let alone being the person to actually translate most of it. Still, I would like to extend my thanks to both Murad and Leopricorn for starting these efforts. I know I did the majority of the translations in the end, but I likely wouldn't have even attempted if those two hadn't initially gotten the ball rolling. So, thanks again for that. And if you're a fan of Onimusha based content, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any more. I would very much appreciate it. Regardless, thanks for watching everyone, and take care of yourselves. Danish out.